Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode. Today, I'm joined by Alex Watts. Alex is a mindset and fitness coach. Alex helps full-time workers who've fallen out of shape get back in control without starving themselves and living that miserable life. Alex has a master's degree in psychology, so we're not just talking about training plans today. We're talking about what's actually going on in your head when you know that exercise makes you feel better, but you still don't want to do it. Today, we're going to be diving in to why so many of us fall out of shape, even when we want to change, why exercise is the best drug out there, and why we still don't stick to it. The psychology behind consistency, stress, and self-sabotage, how to build momentum without perfection, even as a busy dad. So let's dive in. So, Alex, take me back. What was your childhood like? And are there any early influences that shaped your work ethic and your mindset?
Yeah, very good question, mate. So my childhood was pretty good, to be fair. I was always kind of in shape when I was younger. I was often playing sports. I played a lot of football, occasionally played cricket. I did boxing and various things like that. So exercise was always a big part of my life. It was a big part of my identity when I was young in school and when I joined uni. So yeah, like when I was younger, I was very influenced by sports people, and not just footballers, but boxers as well, in particular. Like I grew up watching the Rocky films and stuff like that. So, I was that mindset was always kind of on the fringe for me, whether I was kind of conscious or aware of it. It was always something that I was kind of fascinated by, even before I really understood it, if that makes sense.
You mentioned there the Rocky films. You cannot help but get inspired when you watch Rocky 4 and listen to that soundtrack. I used to box back in the day, and we always used to train to that soundtrack. My boy boxes now, and they still play it at the gym now. And it's like what? It's from the 80s and the 90s, but those soundtracks, they really still inspire you, right?
100%, mate. 100%. Especially the fourth one, like you say. The fourth one is elite. It's so good.
So when did fitness become more than just what it looks? I mean, was there a moment where it clicked, would you say?
To be honest with you, I guess this is in two parts. I mean, it was always a subconscious thing, like I said, for me growing up. It was always something I just did naturally. But until I got to a point where I'd kind of had faced adversity, I'd faced a bad injury in my life. And then when I left uni and went to the corporate world, I found it so much harder.
Mm.
So, and I didn't feel good during that time. So that was sort of a time where I guess it became more about how you feel and not just about looks, because I always maybe when my younger days just assumed it was about everything was about how you look, right? Like in the mirror. And when I got later on, I realized like how important it is to kind of obviously you can't 24/7 feel good, but like how important it is just to feel good in your own body.
Mm.
And yeah, when I actually got back in shape after I'd faced some kind of adversity and fitness became a conscious part of my life, that's when I kind of realized how important it is to how useful it is to kind of feel good while you do it. And, you know, the real positive, like you say, of being in shape is the feeling it gives you and the confidence that it gives you.
Mm. What's your real story then about becoming a coach, Alex? What were you doing before? And let's just go back for a bit of context for the listeners, please.
Yeah, sure. So, like I said before, obviously I started out being very active, playing a lot of football, that kind of stuff when I was younger. And I was it's just part of who I was. When I just before I went to uni, so I went to study education at first. I actually thought about getting into teaching at that point. But just before that, I suffered a chronic back injury playing
Mm.
football. And I didn't realize the extent of the problem at first. It went on for about a year and a half without me realizing that this was going to be a long-term injury, not just a short one. I think I was in the start of my second year at uni at this point, and I found out that the injury was only manageable. It was never going to be cured. It was something I was going to have to live with for the rest of my life. I won't go too far into the technical terms for everyone listening, but
Mm.
yeah, it really did hit me for six, to be honest with you, because I'd never encountered any kind of adversity before, any kind of situation like that where I'd have to kind of think on my feet and, overcome something on my own. So, yeah, that obviously the physical side of it was very hard for me. I couldn't play as much football. I couldn't do as much sport wise. I couldn't really go to the gym. And yeah, I and mentally it really challenged me. I think that obviously everyone will assume that the physical part of it was the hardest, being in pain pretty much most of every day whilst you're at uni. Like, but the mental challenges that gave me was, yeah, it was kind of like second to none. And I had various other problems as well, including neuropathy. I don't know if many people have heard about that. It's like a physical problem of the brain that can occur from having a chronic injury. So yeah, that went on for a good solid year or so, those challenges. And when I got to a point where I was able to kind of overcome, I had therapy, physical therapy and that stuff, and I was able to overcome that stuff. Obviously, I'd been playing a little bit of football, but I hadn't been working out as much. And I'd kind of, by the time I got to my master's degree, when I graduated from my master's degree a couple of years later, I'd kind of fallen out of shape a little bit by then. And then I obviously went into the corporate world now that my body was feeling better and I was feeling mentally healthier. I went into the corporate world, but I was kind of out of shape at this point because I just hadn't been training much and I'd kind of lost that original identity that I had. So when I was then working, and I was working in mental health at the time as a result of my master's degree, I found it really hard to get back in shape, bro. Like honestly, I found it so hard to get myself in gear to train every day. Found nutrition really hard, to be honest with you. Just keeping up with all of that stuff. Um, the old identity for me when I was younger, if you know what I mean, where it just kind of happened naturally, could no longer help me because I wasn't that version of myself anymore. And I
Mm.
definitely wasn't the version of myself that obviously struggled during uni. So yeah, I found it really kind of like it felt impossible to me to kind of get back in shape at that point for a good solid year, probably a couple years, to be fair, whilst I was working. Um, and I would see like pictures of myself and I would think, that's not me. I don't really want to look like that. So when I'd be looking at posts and pictures or photos of me on social media, I'd be really going through them and like trying to pick carefully which ones I post, which I was happy with. I was kind of feeling a bit self-conscious about it. And yeah, when I'd look at myself in the mirror, I'd tell myself, right, this is going to be the week. I'm going to start it again. I'm going to like this is the clean slate, you know? But it would never be that. It would never be that, bro. For so long. Like I just would do like one intense day, intense workout, healthy meals, and then I'd just be back to the binge eating and the skipping workouts after that. Till till I managed to change things. So yeah.
You've got a psychology background, and it sounds like you've really, really gone deep in that. Obviously, you've got a master's degree as
Yeah.
well. What drew you to that? Was it the problems that you had with your back and the frustration of having that injury and how it, and obviously that link between the body and the brain? Is that what drew you to it?
Most definitely, mate. Most definitely. It was going through that experience that made me like I kind of was talking about earlier with the Rocky films, right? Like when I was kind of like subconscious with mindset, like it kind of brought that to my awareness a little bit more. And I wanted to study how we think of people and what affects us and how we can overcome challenges. And I wanted to go deeper with that. So going into psychology, which was something that I wasn't like particularly that interested in before, was yeah, to answer your question, that was why I kind of went into that and down that route. And that's why I went into work in mental health later on and help people as well. And only later would I realize that obviously the full comeback story for me would happen. But yeah, that was definitely it at the time.
That was the catalyst, definitely. I truly believe that exercise is the best drug. I've mentioned this before on the podcast. It's been proven to improve your mood, reduce anxiety, depression, boost self-esteem. It helps with brain function. It improves your sleep. It helps you live longer. If it was sold to people as a drug, people would pay so much for it. Why do you think people can't keep it up? And why doesn't everyone do it, Alex?
Very good question, Luke. I think, and I'll try and answer it by going back to my own story, just from my own experience. But obviously, like at that point for me, when I was able to change things, for me, I've been trying to follow this really rigid routine for so long. And I feel like that's what a lot of people are doing. Okay. Like to answer your question, like people will assume when they can't stick to something or stay consistent, they'll assume that they're lazy. They'll
Yeah.
assume that they don't have enough willpower, right? Because that's what the internet tells us, right? There's a lot of like, uh, I think we call them the gym bros or whatever. Like, fair enough. Like, everyone's got their own kind of idea of
Yeah.
getting in shape, but like, there's a lot of stuff out there now, like saying, "Oh, just stick to it, stay consistent, keep pushing." Like, even though you don't feel like it, just keep showing up, right? And that's how I felt for a long time. I was just trying to force myself, basically, to train, force myself to eat healthy, and yeah, like that's frustrating, right? Because you're basically telling yourself you don't have enough to do it, right? By telling yourself you don't have enough willpower, by telling yourself you're too lazy, right? Basically is you telling yourself that you are not enough. And
Mm.
that's what I was doing for so long. And that's what I think a lot of people are doing, to answer your question. For me, what changed things was thinking back to a time in my life where I was consistent, and that was overcoming the physical challenges with my chronic pain, right? Like, so I know that doesn't help everyone listening to this, but I'll explain it in a way that can. So I was thinking about what I did during that time, and at no point was I telling myself I'm too lazy, or I don't have enough willpower, or I need more discipline, or stuff like that. I was just making simple changes that I knew I could stick to
Mm.
stay consistent, and that was the real change for me. But what I would say now for people is they're so focused on forcing it. They're so focused on pushing themselves with really intense routines to get faster results that actually that's just killing their mood. It's killing their um,
Mm.
motivation and ambition and actual happiness whilst they do it, right? Like, because when you look at people who are consistent with fitness, they're excited to show up and do it every day, right? Like I see you on your runs as well, mate. Like you're excited to show up and do it, you know? That's the difference. Like people who are staying in shape aren't forcing it. It's just a natural process for them. Whereas people who are really struggling, like me in the beginning, it feels forced. It feels really like just draining and like just something that you have to push yourself out of bed for, right? But whereas when it feels natural,
Mm.
it's something that you naturally get out of bed for. So yeah, I would say that's the biggest difference, mate.
What's actually happening in the brain then, Alex, when you know it's good for you, but you still choose to have that lie-in, like you just said, stay on the sofa, stroll on your phone, continually tell yourself, I'm going to start Monday, I'm going to start next week, I'll do it tomorrow. What's actually happening in the brain when you're having that fight with yourself?
To be honest, probably a number of things. And probably a number of things. You're probably convincing yourself of various situations, like maybe life's too busy, or work's too busy, or that maybe the things that you're prioritizing ahead of it for starters.
Mm.
And you're probably also thinking a lot about times where it hasn't worked. Like we say, when you come back to that Monday again, and you another Monday, and you say like, today's going to be different. This week's going to be different. This month's going to be different. You just in deep down like there's part of you that still thinks that it's just going to be like that every time where you fall off,
Yeah.
and it's kind of self-doubt at that point. And, that's a lot of the time that's what's going through people's minds. And all of that kind of stuff is just bringing it back to that state of force, like everything feels forced because you just don't feel good enough anymore to do it. Right. And like, that's not true, but that's basically what's happening in the brain at that point. Like it's kind of like a belief thing. You just don't, your belief has got to that point where you just don't genuinely think that you can do it, and you're not lazy. It's just you're just at a point where it just feels too much for you, and that can happen to anyone at any time, particularly busy people. Like obviously the guys you help, busy dads. Same for me, and with people who work in jobs. Like when your life changes in that kind of way, it
Mm.
becomes harder to juggle things like that. And when we tell ourselves that, and we think about the past failed attempts, and we think about all that kind of stuff, it in our heads, like we're already defeated in our heads before we've even got on the treadmill or we've gone for a walk or whatever it may be. So yeah.
Do you think most people are battling laziness, stress, overwhelm, or emotional avoidance? Or would you say it's a mixture of all of those and everyone's different?
To be honest, I wouldn't say it's laziness at all.
Mm.
Genuinely, I wouldn't say it's laziness at all. I think laziness is actually just another way of saying a lack of importance to a person.
Mm.
And
Promises, yeah.
in a way, like it's not a priority. I think
Mm.
emotional avoidance is a thing because they've got a person who's struggling has probably got to a point where they're not in a good place with fitness, where they're not enjoying it, where they're not
Mm.
feeling good about it, they're not feeling good about themselves inside. So people will tend to avoid those feelings, right? Like they tend to avoid like not feeling they tend to avoid feeling bad about themselves. So
Yeah.
if they think they are going to feel bad about themselves by doing it, then they will avoid it. Stress is another big factor for sure. I think a lot of people struggle to kind of, and certainly I struggled with this for a long time in my life, is regulating their emotions um, on a day-to-day basis, and that's just from work, from general life. I mean, there's obviously tons of things that can happen in a person's life at one time. Like, we're not professional sports people where we've only got our sport to focus on at the weekend and train in the week. A lot of people have a lot of things on at the same time. So, yeah, that ability to manage emotions and manage energy is something that I think is really overlooked. So, yeah, stress would definitely come into that.
Mm. What would you say, as a fitness coach, is the biggest lie that you see people telling themselves, and that lie that just keeps them stuck? What's the most common one?
Probably once again that you don't have enough willpower or you're not disciplined enough, right? Like, discipline doesn't come from just forcing yourself to do it once again, or like waking up one random morning and you know what, like, I'm actually just so dialed in, I'm so locked in now, I'm just gonna go for it. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's something that you build.
Mm.
Consistency is something that you build over time.
Do you think willpower is stronger in the mornings? And there's a debate at the moment online. Some people say that you should do the hard things in the morning because your willpower gets depleted throughout the day, and then it's harder to do the harder thing later on in the day. What's your take on that, Alex?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think a lot of it comes from the that book, Eat That Frog, isn't it? Or Eat the
Yeah,
Frog in the Morning,
yeah,
sort of thing.
yeah. It's a
I
great
don't
book.
know if people have read that, but yeah. So I guess the idea is do the big thing in the morning. But I
Mm.
bet 9 times out of 10 the person won't do the main thing in the morning, right? They'll procrastinate and put off. In this case, workouts, right?
Yeah,
So for me, I don't actually buy too much into that, Luke. To be honest, I think once again, like, having that natural kind of state where you show up and do it anyway and having it as part of your identity and building it as part of your lifestyle is the best tool you could have realistically to show up and do it rather than once again rely on willpower, whether it's in the morning or the evening. It's an interesting debate, but for me, I think it's kind of, it's a very general one. People don't think about the human side of it too much.
what are the most common excuses then, Alex, that you hear from men that say that they want to change?
For men who say that they want to change, I think again, just they'll obviously. I don't know if it's so much excuses, to be honest, but that it's more like that feeling that they get when they see themselves in the mirror or a photo and think, "That's it, I'm going to change right now." Right?
Mm.
Like, they'll they'll that's kind of like a lie in the moment because you're
Yeah,
telling yourself you're going to change based off a picture, but like, until now you haven't found anything that's stuck. So I think just being reactive to things. But yeah, to be honest, like, the excuse once again is they think that they're lazy. They think that they think that they've got not got enough time, or they've got too much to focus on alongside. Like, there is a world in which you can work at, like, say, a 9 to 5 or at
mm,
a busy job and train and be in the shape you want to be in if you've got kids as well. Like, there is a world in which you can have all of that because people out there exist, right? There's dads out there who exist who have, like, a balance of all of that stuff, right?
mm,
And I'm not saying that they're 100% perfect and happy. No one is, but the point is like, it shows it's possible, right? So
mm,
that stuff, everything else that's going on in your life, your work, your personal life, social life, all that kind of, it is just an excuse. Like,
mm.
it really is just an excuse. It's an excuse to cloud all of the internal stuff that I kind of talked about earlier.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. What's one excuse that you used to tell yourself back in the day, then, Alex, that you still hear from a lot of men that you coach now?
Yeah. Hmm. It's probably more than one. So I'm just trying to think of, like, the
Okay.
top one.
What's your top? Yeah, what's your top one or your top three that you hear so often?
Again, I think it would just be I just need to try harder.
Mm,
I think that's a general thing we all tell ourselves with anything where we feel we're a bit short with something.
mm,
I think that we always feel like we could be doing more. And I guess we could be, right? We could be. But the point is, there's a difference between feeling like you should be doing more and actually feeling like you're moving forward, that you're not on day one all the time or you're not constantly having to restart, right? Because I've been on this fitness journey now for well over a year. And
yeah.
am I perfect every day? No. But
Mm,
I know I'm moving forward. Like,
mm,
not just because I'm at a point now where I can see the results in previous photos of me compared to now, but I never feel like right, need to restart today, need to go back to day one, need to just, draw a line under this difficult week I've had. I
mm.
never feel like that now. So yeah, like that kind of feeling needs to go, in my opinion. Like it's not going to be useful for you to constantly think of it as this constant grind that you're going to have to just go all in on now. I think time is another one. Once again, I think time is a big one. I think like people will convince themselves that time is their problem when the reality is there is enough time after work to work out and to have a decent meal, right? But how you're feeling in that moment is what really dictates that. It's not the time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the mindset. Again, always going back to the mindset, the shift in identity, the consistency is so important. If you're feeling good and you're getting the evidence that things are changing, then you'll build on that and you'll keep on going. And then when that resistance comes in, which it always is going to, you'll push on through it, right?
100%, bro. And that's what happens when you build consistency over a period of time. You become the version of yourself at that point that is confident, that does have energy, that does push through those adversities that you just talked about. So, yeah, 100%.
So I know it's a tough question, but how do you coach someone who's when they're low, when they're not feeling up for it, when they can't be asked, when they're just like, "Oh, mate, I'm not feeling it today. I haven't got the energy." What would you say to someone who's feeling like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, this kind of thing would usually come at the start of me working with someone who's just started with me. And
Yeah.
first of all would be to get them out of that all or nothing mindset that, they have to be either doing things 100% or it's not good enough. Right?
Mm,
We want to take things back down to the baseline, and we want to take things away from this idea that you have to be intensely working out all the time just to stay in shape and eating only healthy meals. We want to do something that they know that they can stick to in the
right.
beginning, whether that is just having a step goal, whether that is just literally having a certain amount of getting them a certain amount of protein into their diet and not worrying about too much else in terms of their nutrition, just something that they know they can stick to in the beginning, because that's going to give them that belief that actually they can do it, right? And it's not so much a time or energy thing. It's a more of a, you know, actually knowing that they can stick to something and seeing it means that they can then move to the next level. So yeah, that's how I would certainly approach that with a person who is in that slump of just I can't be bothered, I can't do it sort of thing.
It's small steps rather than being overwhelmed by that big goal that you're looking at, like the Mount Everest analogy of you've got to break up the you've got this sort of North Star, this big vision. And I always say to people that I'm coaching, if you look at the if you look at that North Star, it's so easy to get overwhelmed. You've got to break it down into small, tangible steps, and then have a structure and go from there, right?
Absolutely, mate. And you're 100% right there. And I think to use the mountain analogy again, a lot of people will see this kind of thing as climbing this constant mountain until you get to the top, right? And then eventually, when you get to the top, you're going to be happy, right? Not true. But we're, you know, I don't like to see it like that. For me, it's more of a like kind of like a verge, right? The hardest part is always getting started. That
Mm.
is always the hard, whatever you're doing, not even just fitness. The hardest part is always getting started. So I kind of see it as like pushing this boulder over a verge, right? The verge is the hard part to get started, but once you're over that, you just watch the boulder flow down the mountain, doesn't just naturally, when gravity takes its course. That's how I kind of like to see it. And I feel like that's kind of close to how it is, really. It certainly is with my clients and myself anyway. So, yeah, I think for anyone who's listening and thinking of it as this constant mountain they have to climb, it's worth making that kind of change with how you're looking at it.
Yeah, yeah. The way I look at it is the rocket taking off. When you've got to launch the rocket, you're going to have to use a lot of fuel to get going. But once you're going and you're ticking over, and yeah, it goes back to my fitness journey as well. Going out running consistently every day before work, it was really tough to get going in the mornings. But now, when I'm going to bed, I'm looking forward to getting up early and getting out into that fresh air, getting out running in nature. But yeah, in the beginning, it was tough, exactly what like you said. But once you're going and once you change your identity, and you really say, no, I am someone who's fit, who gets up every morning, and I make it non-negotiable. And I think it's that whole identity shift, is just like you said before, really.
For sure. And it's all momentum as well, isn't it?
Mm.
It's momentum. When you've built enough, when you're talking about the rocket ship, when you've built enough momentum,
Mm.
that's when your identity switches. That's when you're already there. So
Mm.
yeah, completely echo what you're saying, mate.
What's your take then, Alex, on the all or nothing thinking, and how do you break it?
Yeah, my take is it's not really a great way of thinking. It's something that I used to have so often, and sometimes very occasionally it'll creep back in, but because I'm conscious of it now, I can kind of combat it a bit better. But yeah, it's I don't think it's helpful to a person just because, like when you're thinking of everything you have to be doing at 100%. I mean, one, that's subjective anyway, what that looks like, in a fitness sense. Is it running on a treadmill for half an hour every day? Is it um, you know, lifting the right amount of weights? Like, do you know what is 100%? What is all, So that's difficult on its own. But then you kind of set the bar for there where like everything below that is nothing. And when you have that kind of all or nothing mindset, that's when you're less likely to stay consistent and actually take action. Because even on a really like difficult day at work, or where it's been like a difficult day with anything else, whether your kids are being ill or something, and you got to go pick them up from school or whatever, and you just had a really difficult day. Sometimes even just going for a walk for half an hour in the evening
Mm,
is a step in the right direction. But with an all or nothing mindset, you're never going to be able to see that. So
mm,
I would definitely say that it's not useful. Be all in, absolutely, but realize that actually this isn't going to be perfect, and it doesn't need to be perfect either.
yeah, so many of us suffer from perfectionism, don't we? We put it's the whole balancing act. We put too much pressure on ourselves, and then when we don't get to where we want to be as quick, we beat ourselves up, and then we're back in that loop again, aren't we? Life is chaotic. Things are going to happen. You set out a structure, you set out a program, and you're trying to stick to it. And again, I always go back to balance. You want to have a certain amount of pressure on yourself, but then you don't want to seek perfection all the time because we're human at the end of the day, and life is going to get in the way.
Yeah, 100%, mate. And I think the longer that you don't see results based off that all or nothing mindset, the more perfectionism is actually going to kick in, because the less you believe that is actually helping you, if you know what I mean. Like if you don't see results for a certain amount of time, the more perfect you think you have to be. So it's like an endless kind of cycle, and it's really useful to get out of that.
Yeah, definitely. How do you help someone then, Alex, build fitness into their week when they've got work, stress, kids, and a head full of noise, like we've been speaking about? How, again, they're coming back to that same old excuse, I haven't got time. And what would you say to someone who really believes that they haven't got the time?
Well, this is another good question. I mean, this is what I kind of use my method for, the no force method.
Yeah.
Um, which is kind of designed, once again, obviously what it says on the tin, to take you from a state of feeling forced with fitness to it feeling a natural part of your life. And I think the three components that makes it up is very much like we said earlier, right? The kind of bare minimum, and I call it the bare minimum protocol, where we run this thing where you take a certain amount of actions throughout a week that you can stick to. And just by doing things that you can stick to in the beginning,
Mm,
that's going to take you a very long way. Like I said before, even if it is just having a simple step goal, or just having a certain amount of protein and not worrying too much about how many vegetables or whatever or fruits that you're eating.
mm,
Just little things like that that you can stick to in the very beginning. And once you stick to something like that for a week, you will see a massive change already, not
mm.
just in terms of fat loss in your actual body, but you will actually start to feel it. You will start to feel more confident in yourself. So if you are feeling very stressed right now, you feel like, you just don't have enough time alongside all your other responsibilities and your work, just do something in the beginning that you can actually stick to,
Mm.
because that's going to take you a lot further than trying to force yourself to do workouts every day and eat only healthy meals.
Yeah, it's a really good point. What is one thing that you would recommend for a busy dad that he can set this week that's going to set him on that different trajectory than Alex?
A busy dad. So I guess this is probably dependent on whether it's a single dad or whether it's a dad in a relationship or whatever. But I would probably say, like I said before, do the bare minimum this week. I know
Mm,
that goes completely against what you're
yeah,
probably thinking you should be doing. You should be thinking you should be out for a run at 5 a.m. or whatever,
yeah.
or having a salad for dinner or something. But genuinely, just focus on something that doesn't take you too far away from your current habits,
Yeah.
but make sure it's a positive step in the right direction. And that could be to walk. I mean, something that I often do with people is to have that step goal at first to make it more part of their lifestyle rather than this pressure to train every day at first. So have a number in mind. Maybe, a lot of people with iPhones check your phone, see what your kind of average step count is at the moment, and maybe just aim for a number that you think will push you a little bit, like you said before, Luke, by just having a little bit of pressure, but not too much at the same time for the balancing act. Something that will push you, but not overwhelm you. And just try and hit that every day for a week and see where that takes you and see what that actually does to your stress levels and lack of belief right now. Because I bet you any money, the stress levels will start to go down and the
Mm.
confidence will start to raise up with the energy. Okay. And I know you might be thinking, oh, but what if I literally have no time?
Mm.
Then I do think people will have some time, even if you've got like a half an hour window. Do you know what I mean? Like just to do something like that, something really simple, because then you'll start to realize that actually I can do this. I can do this. And then I can just take it to the next level from there.
I think self-awareness is so important with this. When you're constantly telling yourself these stories that you haven't got the time, when you become really self-aware, you can take a step back and you can say, right, where can I move things around? What can I stop doing? What can I start saying no to? Setting boundaries, and then you can start saying, right, this is this isn't what I like to do with my clients is we'll look at the person that they want to become, and we'll say, right, that person does X, Y, and Z throughout the day. So when you become self-aware and you can say, right, this isn't, this isn't aligned with the person that I want to become. I need more time doing this, and this to become that person. Then you can do it. But again, I always say it comes back to being self-aware.
100%, mate. And I think something else so important you said there as well about boundaries,
Yeah.
especially for someone who is possibly a busy dad, or at least in my client's context, a busy professional. Um,
Mm,
a lot of the time, people will be carrying stuff from their day
mm,
back home with them. And it happens to all the best of us, right? Like it's something that we're passionate about, it's something that we want to do every day. We want to work hard, we want to do a good job, right? Some things they stay with us when it happens, and there's no need to feel guilty about it. But it's very important to kind of set that boundary with yourself, like you're saying, right? This is the time where I don't have to fully forget about what happened at work today,
yeah.
but I am not going to let it stop me from doing certain things. I'm not going to let it stop me from training. I'm not going to let it stop me from spending time with my kids in your client's context, or actually uh, eating a decent meal. I'm not going to just binge eat instead because it's on my mind, right? I'm going to draw the line and still do things anyway, even though I'm probably still going to think about it from time to time.
Mm. When people get back into shape, then Alex, what changes first? Body, confidence, or standards?
I think that's an interesting one when you threw standards in there. So I was
Yeah.
pretty confident with the answer until you said standards. I think, to be honest, standards in terms of, again, feeling all or nothing and thinking that you have to 100% be perfect with your workouts and go on like do a 5K run every day or whatever. I think lowering your expectations and standards is probably the first step. And I
Yeah.
know once again it goes against what a lot of people say, but doing that will give you that confidence and it will give you that initial change with your body to the point where you think, actually, if I just keep moving things up from here, the more I move, the faster the fat's going to drop off of me,
Mm,
you
mm,
know? So I would say, yeah, the standards actually would probably go before that. And then when you start seeing changes, then the confidence goes up and the energy goes up, right? And then, like we said before, it's just momentum from that.
yeah, exactly. It's all about building momentum. How does fitness change, Alex? In your opinion, how does it change the way that we show up in relationships, at work, or as a parent?
Yeah, I think it impacts our mood massively, right?
Mm,
Like, I think someone, and I know it's like a kind of like a standard thing that people think about when it comes to relationships. Like, there's this standard belief I hear from so many people, right? Like, oh, you're gonna fall out of shape when you're in a committed relationship and stuff like this, right? But it really doesn't have to be the case. And I think it impacts relationships on a negative level quite a lot.
yeah.
Um, I think just in terms of overall energy, um, being at work, confidence, time with your family. all that kind of stuff, especially if you're someone who wants to get back in shape,
Mm,
right? You're feeling kind of negative about it deep down, even if you might not admit it to yourself right now. That negative feeling alone is going to affect your mood in some way, whether you can see it or not. And that's going to affect your relationships. It's going to affect your work life balance. It's going to affect kind of everything that's going on at the same time. So, once again, I think obviously if you do want to get back in shape, then it should be a priority in your life, not just for, like we said earlier, not just about looking good or even just about feeling good, just about the version of yourself that creates in your own life and what that can do for others as well. Because I feel like everyone deserves to be that best version of themselves.
mm,
Um, and then, nothing should really hold us back from becoming that.
yeah, yeah. I think it's the foundation of everything. When you're healthy, when you're fit, you're going to radiate that abundance mindset as well, aren't you? And it's going to feed into everything. You're going to be in a better mood. You're going to be at a higher vibration, and yeah, that's why I always say to everyone, I think it really is the wonder drug. It does so much for your confidence, doesn't it? The What would you say is the biggest confidence killer that you see in men who have fallen out of shape? Then
Biggest confidence killer for men who have fallen out of shape. I think, to be honest, just obviously you could say in terms of like relationships, and you could say in terms of just, I think just how the energy they kind of exude, if
mm,
that makes sense. Like, I mean, I see it a lot when before people work with me compared to when we're kind of either at the end or during. Like, the biggest confidence killer is probably just in who they are.
yeah,
They've lost connection with who they are. They've
mm,
lost the identity in themselves. And it's kind of like an overlooked thing.
mm,
And once again, what reinforces that like lack of energy in themselves is that feeling that it has to be forced,
mm,
you know. Take that away and you soon see a person reconnect with their own identity.
mm.
So yeah, I hope that it's probably not what you expected me to say, but I hope that answers your question in some way still.
Yeah, it comes back to self-worth, I think. Is when
Mm.
when you love yourself, when there's a lot of self-worth there, then you build that discipline, don't you? They say discipline's the highest form of self-love. When when you truly love yourself, when you've got that respect for yourself, then you'll do the work. But it's shifting that identity, it's shifting that mindset. That is the tough thing. What is one thing that someone can do today to earn self-respect back, Alex?
I'm gonna probably sound a bit like a parrot, but
It's a tough one, I know.
do something. Set yourself one task today, just one thing,
Mm,
something you know you can do, and
mm,
do it. Whether that is a walk, half an hour walk, even less, 20-minute walk. Do that and then come home, and then the next day do it again,
mm,
and you will soon see how your own self-worth rises. Because
mm,
our own self-worth is kind of like a product of how well we keep to our word to
mm.
ourselves.
Yeah.
And when we back up what we say we're going to do,
Mm,
that's when our confidence goes up. And that's when our self-worth goes up. Because I guess there's a difference between self-worth and confidence.
yeah.
But by actually doing things that you know you can stick to, once again, your
Mm,
self-worth is going to raise. So you might not believe it in the beginning because it is very hard to believe in the beginning, right? Especially when you've been trying to force really intense routines for ages, or anything in your life. But yeah, it's uh, it's something that I really do value, that kind of approach.
mm. Yeah, it goes back to that first step being the hardest and taking that first step, building momentum, building the confidence, building that discipline muscle, really. So, about building momentum, Alex, and keeping going, what are the warning signs that people should look out for when they feel like they're falling off the wagon, that negative self-talk is creeping in more and more and more. They're beginning to binge eat again. They're watching Netflix more or whatever these things might be.
I think obviously when that stuff starts to overtake the actual overall fitness goals and various
Mm,
things going on in your life, like when you start to do more of that than the other stuff, is a warning sign, right? But that all once again is just a sign that it's like a disconnect with your identity and fitness once again. So maybe it is time in that moment just to dial things back a bit. Maybe a sign is that you're going too much too soon. Maybe you've got a bit excited about your progress and you've been, pushing yourself to go to the gym for like an hour or something like that, or you're pushing yourself to do a bit too much and it's too hard to stick to alongside everything else. So it's in that moment, maybe it's the time just to dial things back a bit and reconnect with your identity in that moment,
Mm,
and where things are at in your lifestyle. But yeah, that is probably the biggest sign that you've probably been pushing things a little bit too much too quickly.
mm,
Um, and yeah, that's when the burnout can creep in, and that's when, like you say, things like watching too much TV, or like just spending too much time scrolling social media, and binge eating and stuff like that. That's when that kind of stuff can creep in, and it's time to just dial things back a little bit and just
mm.
not restart. Like we said before, it's not about restarting, but it's just about, you know, doing things that you can stick to.
Tapping into your why as well. I think we've got to always go back to why are we doing this? Fundamentals. Why are we doing this? When your why is big enough and strong enough, then you can just tap back into that, and then that's going to push you on through for that resistance and the hard times.
100%.
What's your view on accountability then, Alex? Because I think it's so important, whether that's in fitness, whether that's in mindset, all of the things that we've spoken about today. How important is accountability?
It's massive.
Mm,
It's massive. Obviously, it's useful to have accountability from someone else, like whether it's a coach or whatever. Like that
mm,
can be an absolute game changer. Like I've got my own coach as well,
yeah,
for growing my business, but like, and that keeps me accountable in a lot of ways. I think self accountability is really underrated, and once again, that comes back to me for identity, right? When you identify with the changes you want to make, when you identify with fitness for just staying consistent every day, or
mm,
whatever that may be in your life, for example, like if alcohol has been a problem for you,
mm,
and if you're identifying as someone who drinks alcohol, then it's going to be very hard to keep yourself accountable to make those changes. But if you're identifying as someone who is getting better, as someone who is actually, living a healthier lifestyle, then it's so much easier to keep yourself accountable to those changes, right?
mm.
For me, self accountability is massive because then you don't have to rely on external sources to actually help you make the change that you're trying to make.
Yeah, no, it is a really good point, and it's the lies that we tell ourselves as well, isn't it? And again, it goes back to that whole story that we tell ourselves when we keep on telling ourselves these. Well, it's a lot of BS. I think we tell ourselves these stories, and we make up a narrative, and we're like, well, I can't do X, Y, and Z because of this, and again, it just goes back to the whole identity. And when you shift that identity and you become the healthier person, you become the person who doesn't binge, and whether that's food, drink, scrolling on your phone, then you can move into that better version of yourself.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what's something that you wish people understood, Alex, about fitness and consistency? Because consistency is key in everything, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing I would love people to understand is that it's something that you build. It's
Mm,
not something that you either have or don't have. You
no,
don't just randomly start staying consistent one day with your workouts, with your nutrition, whatever it may be.
yeah.
It's something that you build. It's the same with discipline. It's something, you build it into your life. There's not people who are born with discipline and people who aren't born with
Mm,
discipline, right? There's not people who are born successful and unsuccessful, right? A lot of it is obviously in terms of upbringing and that, but you know, like when it comes to actually staying consistent with something, you build up to it.
mm,
Like we said earlier. So yeah, that's something I would love people to kind of realize about consistency. Isn't this something? Obviously, it is important. Like we said before, it is massive for
mm.
any change that you want to make, not just fitness, right? Staying consistent every day. Eventually, things will start to happen, and you will start to see the results that you want, and then you can move forward again. But I think building consistency rather than just trying to force it is the thing I'd love people to know.
So, if there was one message that you could leave with busy people, Alex, who feel stuck, they feel out of shape, what would it be?
Hmm.
Mm,
I think to realize you're not as far away as you might think you are.
no,
Like I think we train ourselves when there's something we're struggling with to think that actually is so much to do, right?
Yeah.
That having that belief on its own can stop you in your tracks with anything. But
Mm,
realizing that actually you're not far away from feeling good about fitness again. You're not far away, like I was talking about the verge earlier, where you push a boulder over the verge, and you're
yeah.
not far away from that downward slope,
Mm,
you know? So it's just putting enough consistent actions together to get to that point.
mm,
So yeah, um, and you can do this. Like, there's not. It's not a case of there's certain people who do stay in shape. There's certain people who are just active. It's just who they are, and then there's people who struggle. Right? That's not the case. It is not the case. You can form that identity for yourself as well. That would
mm.
be the message that I want to leave that person.
Yeah, I think comparison as well is a big thing, especially with social media. I know a lot of people that are strong on Instagram that comparing themselves to all these fitness gurus and
Yeah,
influencers, and they beat themselves up, right?
yeah, for sure, mate. And again, but then you look. That's what the thing is. A lot of those people will look at those fitness fanatics or whatever, and they'll see kind of like what they'd like to be, but then it will give them that impression that they can't be like that because they don't have it right now, and then they think less of themselves, right? But that's
Mm,
just not the case. It's just that that person's found a way to make it feel natural for them, so showing up is feels easier than falling off. Like falling off actually feels harder for them. So whereas it's the opposite for you now. That's the only difference, right? They've just got to a point where that's the case. It's really not much else other than the actual physical side of it that is a difference. It's just about getting to that point for you.
mm. Yeah, yeah. And you only get the best version on Instagram and social media
Yeah.
anyway, right? You don't get the full picture, do you?
Get like probably less than 1%, right? If someone's like, you're like 0.5%, you don't see the arguments and stuff they have with people. You don't see the bad days. So yeah,
Yeah.
like never believe everything you see.
Exactly, exactly. So if you could talk to your younger self then, Alex, if you could go back and give that younger version of yourself who was having the problems with his back, who was very frustrated, who was down and out back in the day, what would you tell him now?
Um, I would say that you don't have to like the pressure that you're feeling right now, other
Mm,
than the physical side of it. And when I was out of shape, like this pressure doesn't have to stop you.
yeah,
You don't actually have this pressure doesn't need to dictate your life.
yeah.
You know, you can change things and you will change things, but not by pressurizing yourself to do it or
Mm,
forcing yourself to do it. The
mm,
way things are going to change is by making it feel natural for you.
mm, mm. Yeah, it goes back to the willpower thing you were saying. It's not forcing things; it's changing the way you feel first, and then progressively doing it more naturally.
Yeah.
What does the next chapter look like for you then, Alex? And where can people connect with you?
So people can connect with me on my Instagram, which is AlexJWatts_. I've also got a YouTube channel that I've recently set up. So
Cool.
it's got
Okay.
Alex Watts Coaching. So I'm looking to kind of grow that as well. So yeah, you can connect with me on there. Definitely check out my social media first, and then that'll be able to take you everywhere else. Um, yeah, what's next for me? I think for me it's just about growing this what I've been building all this time, you know? I'm very passionate about my ideas around fitness. I'm very passionate about my solutions and my method that I use. And it's
Mm,
about just putting that out more into the world. A lot of people have benefited from it so far, and I want as many people as possible who do feel like they're struggling in terms of dropping body fat and just actually having that kind of balance in their life to be able to do it and feeling like they can do it.
mm,
I'm passionate about helping as many of those people as I possibly can to
mm,
become that version of themselves. Once again, um, that's happy and confident, and, feeling good about their body and feeling good about themselves. So that's very much the goal from me here, dude. I think that yeah, to keep building things, to keep growing, to keep building, you know. And I know that probably my way of doing things goes against what a lot of people on the internet probably say, but that's okay to me. I appreciate that I'm a little bit polarizing with it. Yeah, I want to grow that side of things because I think there's a lot of people that can benefit from it.
mm. Yeah, 100%, mate. I want to thank you so much today, Alex, for coming on and giving up your time and sharing your wisdom. I love what you're doing, helping the busy people, turning their lives around, mate, without feeling like it's a military operation. I think most people They don't need more pressure, but they just need a plan that they can actually stick to. And I think a lot of the stuff that we've spoke about today is tangible, it's real, it's stuff that people can actually take away and use. I think the biggest takeaway for me has been that you haven't got to be perfect, even when you just got to keep on showing up with that consistency when you're feeling tired, stressed, when your kids are kicking off, when your head's noisy, but it's choosing to do the hard thing anyway. I'll put all your links in the show notes, mate, anyway. Thank you so much for coming on today, Alex. I really appreciate it.
No worries, man. Thank you, Luke, for having me on. To be honest, it's been a real pleasure.
No worries. Take care, Alex.
And you, mate.